There have been spectacular box office bombs, and Snow White will probably be spared the fate of counting among the worst. But this remake fails on a whole different level, falling from the greatest height imaginable. A classic and beloved film property that would, with minimal effort, be a slam dunk, easy as pie, piece of piss, and somehow free-falling to a grotesque and gory splat. In a meta way, the original Snow White film represents the character of Snow White. And this modern version of the film is the wicked stepmother, vain, insecure, overbearing, conceited, less naturalistic, in constant need of affirmation, wearing sumptuous dresses, thick makeup, and bejeweled, but not attracting the attention she desires, and everyone around her going through the motions in quiet apathy. Source material to work with. Snow White is one of the most charming, universally recognized properties in Western culture, the jewel in the crown of Disney. So well received when it debuted in cinemas in the 1930s, it vaulted the company to the status of an American powerhouse, establishing the Germanic castle and pretty damsel aesthetic that would become synonymous with the brand. It is suffused with iconic imagery, tunes part of the American songbook, dazzling effects for its time, and the seven dwarfs realized on screen with heartwarming appeal and fluid dynamic movement. Doing a faithful adaptation with a unified vision and respect for the material would be a license to print money, a guaranteed smash hit. Doing a fair to middling version, constrained by busybodies and studio oversight so that it was somewhat conventional beat for beat without any particular spark or magic, would still be a sure bet as a vast financial success, despite a measured reaction from critics. Even a relatively ordinary or patchy or kind of crap version, cynically slapped together as a product, a few mediocre extra songs thrown in, an unnecessarily extended runtime, and low-energy performances, would still eke out a profit before being memory-holed, as long as it stuck to the absolute basics and contours of the original, and the stars comported themselves with bland professionalism in public. Think of how mind-warpingly inept a production would have to be to find a level lower than that, fumbling perhaps the most assured out-and-out winner in the whole Disney vault, with practically everything going for it. And we're not talking complex or elaborate source material with very particular devotees here, like The Lord of the Rings. We're talking a simple story with very clear beats and a basic wholesome tone. You would have to be brain-dead to mess that up. Studio resources to utilize. Imagine you are not only bringing to life one of Disney's and popular culture's most iconic tales, but you have Disney's resources to call upon. Entertainment's behemoth that has acquired a gigantic proportion of the entertainment sphere, including a stable of household name studios. With every entertainment resource known to man, cutting-edge rendering technology, editing suites peopled with hundreds of talented workers, green screen enclosures, and the backing of a media company juggernaut's marketing and advertising departments. Imagine having all that backing and still being on the cusp of a calamity that crashes and burns with the public. Production shenanigans. Imagine a production emerging out of a studio with a century's worth of developmental expertise, a recent slate of glossy live-action remakes that raked in billions of dollars, with source material full of easily replicable imagery and a steady, colorful, uncomplicated tone, and then utterly fucking up the process of creating the movie. A seemingly endless series of reshoots, astounding budget blowouts, the vision and aesthetic getting thrashed about, resulting in some botched, horrendous, color-saturated, gaudy chocolate box aesthetic with headache-inducing depth perspective, wince-inducing sheen and glimmer, photorealism blending or collapsing into cartoony pastel, giving way to waxy filters, and the seven dwarves, or magical people, or whatever they're supposed to be, emerging from this compositional and rendering clusterfuck as pure nightmare fuel, supposedly frolicking and capering and dancing, but looking like rage virus zombies from 28 Days Later in zero gravity, lurching and hovering in dance numbers devoid of any levity, grace, or spirit because they are obviously shot in an empty green room with Rachel Zegler cheerfully serenading tennis balls on sticks. Imagery beyond the imaginings of Goya or Hieronymus Bosch. It seems like the trailer is trying to tell two stories, the original fairy tale and its modernized counterpart, but instead of an enlivening hybrid, it comes across as disconnected, the original divested of its simple charm, and the new themes looking incongruous and feeble in a context that doesn't suit them. Flaky people weighing in. Imagine greenlighting a production that ought to be the most breezily simple, uncontentious proposition imaginable, redoing a simple family classic, a tale so blandly and benignly straightforward it would take an astonishing effort to undermine it, and then somehow actually managing to do so, and not just with one irksome or eyebrow-raising incident that could be overlooked, but with a steady stream of hackles-raising glitches that cumulatively rub people up the wrong way and give the impression of people involved with the production imbuing it with their own modern-day hang-ups and perspectives, weighing in with opinions that are out of step with prevailing attitudes and sensibilities regarding the property, and which build a narrative of the new film likely having a bit of an attitude and lacking the lightness of touch and whimsical spirit expected of it. Imagine, for instance, a well-known and well-regarded little-person actor weighing in with some hang-up about the use of little people in a film known for its little people, providing acting opportunities, likely opportunities of a lifetime for little people actors, and this being followed up with a leaked image of preposterous magical people, a studio's cack-handed and contrived effort at trying to adapt and extricate itself from an issue that only exists in their culturally oversensitive minds. Oddly, that actually happened. Imagine the lead as Snow White, who is half Colombian, alerting the world to her role with a tweet mordantly trying to get ahead of the issue of race. Then, imagine her speaking about the role in cavalier terms, treading all over the time-honored verities and innocence of the original, framing it as anachronistic and in need of renewal, a sentiment not especially shared by the public, who rightly feel that not everything has to move with the times, that things can be appreciated and even derive or maintain their charm by being unabashedly old-fashioned, and the times, such as they are dubious and lame in many respects. And then imagine topping that off with insinuations about the downplayed role of a male character who seems barely to figure in this new iteration. Somehow, all of that happened, putting this production in a unique category of films that would have benefited more from the total absence of any media engagement than from the expense of a publicity junket. Beauty botching. Imagine somehow conspiring to present to the public a Snow White, the fairest of them all, who was markedly less attractive than her statuesque, willowy, refined-featured stepmother, supposedly a vain aging figure, insecure about her appearance and appeal. It would take a stupendous amount of stupidity to bring about such a glitch in the basic tenor and characterization of a beloved classic, and yet somehow they managed to screw this up. Downvote chaos. Imagine how much of a disconnect you would have to create for the trailer for a remake of an iconic family fantasy film, the easiest slam dunk in cinema, to receive the most eye-popping downvote ratioing in history. A ratio so earthquake-inducingly disproportionate, so skewed it is able to knock the globe off its axis. It pushes the narrative far beyond any notion of chuds or reactionaries having an influence, to representing a proper, unquestioned groundswell of ill will and discontent, beyond the reaches of entertainment media to characterize, downplay, spin, or attribute to anything other than the broad generality's middle finger. Imagine, too, the comment section for the trailer being a playground of sarcastic wit, with like-minded souls posting hilarious takes, many getting more upvotes than the actual trailer they're lampooning, and yet all of that actually happened. The impossibility of gradual redemption. There are plenty of films that bombed harder than Snow White is likely to bomb. Heaven's Gate, 1980, had a budget of $44 million and grossed only $3.5 million worldwide. A failure and critical backlash that led to the studio pulling the film from theaters, the film's director losing his reputation, the studio being sold, and the film being blamed for the end of Hollywood's freewheeling era and the rise of corporate blockbusters in the 1980s. However, a lot of films like Heaven's Gate went on to find an audience and earn a gradual critical re-evaluation and be lauded by luminaries of cinema. Snow White will never experience that. It will be disparaged and written off when it comes out, and remain that way until Walt Disney is de-thawed and has a go at re-editing it. Snow White may not be the biggest bomb in cinema history, but it will stake a claim to being the biggest farce in cinema history, because in terms of source material, studio resources, and a simple brief, it had a staggering height from which to fall, and in March, we get to witness it crash to earth.
What keeps you going?
You know what it is, Theo? I just don't think about it.